I'm super excited to get things started today and jump right in with Nick. Nick is the SVP of Global Integrated Marketing at Vans. And Nick and I have had a pre-conversation and talked through some pretty cool stuff. So I'm really excited to be able to further that conversation and share some of those things with you guys. Hey man, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm good. Hey, first of all, thanks again for doing this. I know you're super busy. I'm a massive Vans fan. I've already told you that before. I'm also a massive fan of what you guys are doing in this space right now. You're pioneering some things just as you pioneered lots of other experiential type marketing stuff in the past. I guess I'd love to maybe just kick off and start with, a big question. What's your version of what the metaverse is? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to Vans?
Yeah, my version, our version, I think it definitely keeps changing. What we started to do at Roblox is really start testing what sort of our first foray into the metaverse could be or is. That space just evolves so quickly. I think even just the announcements this week, right? Lots of conversation around what it could be, and I think just generally more awareness around the topic as well. So we actually started working on this quite a while ago, and for us it was important to find really the perfect partner for our brand, and that's why we decided to team up with Roblox. We were really thoughtful about the space to really have the right platform and the right partnership, just like any collaboration we do and any partnership we do as a brand, and it has to be right. But also we wanted to have a platform where we could have deep connectivity because like you said, that's really our brand's ethos. We're all about deep engagement in IRL, so when it comes to URL, we wanted to really find a way to sort of replicate that where we could champion creative self-expression.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things we really spent some time talking about Roblox-wise was the partnership piece, and maybe a little bit more around sort of how important a partnership is, the relationship is with the folks that you're working with when you're exploring stuff like this. Where does that rank, and how important is it to have a good relationship with a partner like that when you're doing things like this?
Yeah, I think first, obviously, it's all about the consumer, right? So we needed to find a platform where our consumer was already present and where we could come in and sort of add value, where it was authentic for us to be on. And Roblox for us was that brand. We had a really good connectivity with them. Our purposes aligned very much around the idea of creative self-expression, right? Roblox essentially is a gigantic user-generated, content community with thousands of games on. We operate very similar like that as a brand. We have a lot of users and consumers that just love our brand, that are creating their own product via our customs platform, that have many stories about sort of when and where they've been wearing Vans. So for us, it was really about how can we be a part of that community that is so important to us, and how can we, in the best way, really inspire our fans to provide them with an experience where they can further unleash their creativity, where they can express themselves through, fashion, the things they wear, how they play, how they connect with each other. And so that made a lot of sense for us to really come together and sort of have that symbiotic relationship with Roblox. Also helped that there was a lot of white space for us as a brand, on the platform. Skate is obviously inherently part of our DNA as a brand, and it has been, for over 50 years. So we were sort of able to come on board with Roblox, but also they were awesome in just connecting with a developer called The Gang that sort of helped us, really bring the ideas to life that we had, and actually make them so much better. So it actually quickly became sort of almost a three-way relationship between Roblox as a platform, obviously the developer that sort of, helped us to realize our creative ideas. And we're just so stoked on how the whole thing went to market and came to life. And for us to be able to give something to the community that just really had impact. The results that we had so far is, we got a 94% approval rating for the game, which is not only up there sort of with the most played games, but it's the best brand experience so far that's on the platform. So yeah, shout out to the gang who just did an amazing job developing a true experience here that I think is a real value add to that community.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think one of the other things I thought was fascinating too is just a little bit of the conversation that we got into about sort of learnings. And one of the things that you brought up was the discussion about specialists in the space. When you start thinking about creating digital products and doing things like that and putting them into these spaces and how those folks, have to really understand that space, and it could be different than sort of traditional product developers and things like that. Can you talk a little more about some of those learnings and things that, you're thinking about like that as you move forward into sort of the second version of this, or what you're going to do in the future, and how some of that stuff plays into it?
Yeah, sure. We set out to create something that was really an experience, right? So product for us was secondary, right? Like, we knew there was an opportunity. We have, for anyone who's not familiar, we have a big customs platform on our .com where you can essentially go in and you can design your own shoes, and then we make them and we send them to your house, right? That was a part that very early on we thought would be just a really cool feature to have, given the appetite, right, for the consumer to really dress their avatars the same way that they dress themselves. So we knew that was an opportunity. Obviously, we're a footwear and apparel brand, so backpacks, hats, t-shirts, etc. Also an opportunity there. But it was sort of a part of the conversation. It wasn't the conversation initially. Our conversation initially really centered around how can we replicate what we do IRL and URL, and how can we make that authentic? So customs was a natural thing for us to put in there. So was a skate shop, right?
Yeah.
So was Cameo Stephen Doran, who is our ambassador of fun, the son of the co-founder, who you'll find in the game handing out, hot dogs. So it was really, I guess, more holistically thinking about how do we show up as a brand and how should we show up in the platform, but what are the other opportunities we have when sort of the digital world is wide open, right? So we're still learning here, and we're still moving through what this could look like. And there are some things that are like obvious, shoes, t-shirts, etc. But there are also things where we have to think, there are items that the Robos consumer uses, like shoulder pads, right? We don't make shoulder pads in real life, right? So what does that look like, right? We have a waffle mascot, so we made that available there. But we also made like a shoe necklace available. That's not something we would ever make, right? Like, well, you should never say never. Maybe that will transfer into real life. Going to Disneyland, there were a lot of people with shoulder pads on, so maybe that is starting to translate. But those are the opportunities here, and I think it's very much at the beginning, sort of for us as a category and as a footwear and apparel industry. It's sort of very much at the beginning of thinking about what this could be, but it very quickly opened up just an opportunity that honestly last year we hadn't really thought about, other than maybe digital product from a sustainability or a selling perspective of digital catalogs and things like that. So this really opens up the opportunity for us to have like essentially another channel, in another digital channel with true digital product, and bridge the gap between sort of the IRL and the URL worlds.
Yeah, I think what's also fascinating about that is just the the difference in sort of it's not a digital twin sort of setup where you're going just move shoes into the metaverse so that people can skate with band shoes like they normally do, but it's these it's the authenticity piece side of it that you talked about earlier. So it's the shoulder pads, it's the weird necklaces, it's all the other things that exist. I think every week there's a new item in Roblox that comes up that is entirely ridiculous and becomes the thing that everybody wants. And to some extent, nobody's sitting around thinking about how do we create those products and what do they look like. So there's an entirely new sort of creator workforce that's spinning up around this. That's really interesting. I guess, so we kind of fast forwarded into the Roblox piece, but I'd love to back up a bit and talk, when you're first starting to think about, hey, this is a thing we want to explore, I've got to bring the rest of the business along with me to have these conversations, to get into this space, to support what we're doing and pull these things together. Where did that start, and what was your sort of strategy on sort of getting that to happen? I think a lot of the folks on the phone that may be thinking, hey, is this right for us to experiment in? When they decide, yes, hey, we should take, a part of the metaverse and say, let's do some R&D, let's try something. They've got to bring the rest of the leadership group along. So I'd love to hear your sort of journey and how that happened.
Yeah, for sure. I've always been a big fan of testing and learning, and with testing and learning comes experimentation and trying things out. And I think maybe what's a little bit unique to us is with the skate heritage that we have, it's okay for us to do things that we're doing that are part of a creative process or that are part of trying things, where sure, we'll set our KPIs, and we'll have a strategy behind and we have goals behind, but it's okay to have things fail, right? A lot of things advance sort of start in a small way, or sort of start in a region or start in a country, or a marketing manager might have an idea, and often if that idea is good and it sort of takes hold, it grows, right? And becomes maybe a global platform. The House of Vans is a good example, something that started in the US, in New York at the time, and then scaled around the world because people in the individual regions just saw the opportunity and took that. And it was a similar thing, and is a similar thing here with Roblox. The only thing that's different is that you don't need that many people, right? Like, you don't need that many people involved in sort of pushing the idea forward. You just need the buy-in. So for us, it was really important to sort of position this as an experiment, and position this as an opportunity, but always grounded in insight. We knew that our core consumer is massively into gaming. So this is where it's funny that we're talking about the metaverse, because this actually started as very much as a gaming opportunity and gaming idea.
Yep.
It's only really the last, I want to say, sort of 3 months that the metaverse word has, become the thing. So for us, it was okay. Well, if we're gonna be more present within gaming, we're already involved in some games on sort of from a console perspective, right? In Asia, we've done mobile games, very specific within some platforms. Where does it make sense, and how do you go about that? It's really, for us, positioning as an experiment, identifying some resources that we can put at it, keeping the audience, our internal audience, engaged and informed, but really having executive sponsorship, right, that believes in the idea and pushes that through. In that case, that was me, and my role really was to remove roadblocks along the way. My role was really, together with the team and the core team that worked on it, was sort of to sell the idea and keep people engaged and excited about it. And most companies will have sort of a diverse set of age ranges, which just naturally means people don't know what Roblox is, or what the opportunity is. So making sure you bring them along, you're educating them along the way, you give those teams the opportunity to be involved in the process, but just sort of very much keeping the focus on sort of the size of the prize, and and continuing to sort of have that belief whilst pivoting. Like there are changes that we've made, and they're actually changes that we've built into the idea because we want to learn from the community sort of as we evolve to take that back in. So yeah, I would say the biggest thing is try and find a way on how you can sort of pitch and create an experimentation lane, and then get buy-in from some key stakeholders that help you sort of along the way to keep the idea alive, because you're gonna go through ups and downs, and you're gonna hit roadblocks, and you're gonna hit just natural snags along the way, right?
Yeah. And I think, I guess you mentioned the feedback loop. I'd love to hear a bit more about how you guys are managing that feedback loop, back into the organization and sort of being able to iterate like that. And then the second thing is measurement. We talked a bit about this when we talked, but that always comes up, right? And especially when you're trying to influence folks that, hey, we should be doing this thing and this thing is working, et cetera. A little bit different at Vans because it's such a pop culture driven brand, and sort of being part of that zeitgeist is almost as necessary as it is sort of a product marketing sort of play. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about like how you guys are creating that feedback loop and looping that back in. And then the second thing is, how do you talk about measurement when it relates to this kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, there's two sides to the feedback. One is the feedback within the platform itself, right? Yeah. So the same way that we moderate and manage our community on social media, we tap into that in the same way with the Roblox community, right? So listening to what our consumers are telling us, right? So one of the things that we knew, but we didn't really know if people were interested is, people on Roblox really want to be a part of these worlds. So they want to be, the person in the skate shop, or the person, flinging the hot dogs and having a job and actually having a role in that. We didn't know that was something that our community within the experience wanted to do. That is absolutely something we're seeing now is, hey, how can we be a part of the game? What can we do? So we're going to take that into the versioning as we're moving ahead, right? To like really listen and make those changes. So it becomes a better experience for the community, whatever that means in terms of sort of cultural moments, or whatever that means in terms of brand moments and how we show up there. The other thing is, what are we hearing and learning and seeing on sort of how people are and the consumer is consuming the product? What are they designing there? What do they like, right? That's a really interesting one, and very much at the beginning, because we hadn't even thought about the amount of work it would be to merchandise a digital store, because it is different. So the awesome thing here is that we're now seeing what people are wearing, what our consumer likes within the platform. So obviously we're learning and hearing and seeing that we can then bring into the business and potentially even bring into sort of as we're bridging the IRL URL world, right? So I would say there's like the consumer experience, and then there is the what are we learning as an always on, right? Essentially, it's an always on platform where our consumer engages, because they're not just playing there, they're talking with each other, they're hanging out with each other, they're meeting with each other, right? It's so much more than just playing a skate game, right?
Yeah. And I think on the feedback side, what's interesting too is a lot of that stuff that you're pulling back in is relevant in other channels, right? Because you're learning more about who fans of Vans are and what they're doing with the internet, whether it's playing games or whatever, or the metaverse. But you're learning more about them, right? So you feed those learnings back into other channels. So it's not just the value of what, Roblox is creating from that single sort of channel you're in, but what you're learning from the community. What about the measurement side of things? How do you look at, success? I mean, you talked a little bit about the culture inside of the company and how it breeds experimentation and test and learn and things like that. And you talked about the 94%, kind of approval rating that you're getting back on the experience itself. How do you talk about, success and measurement around this when you're having water cooler conversations with the other leadership in the org and things like that?
Yeah, and this is probably different category and sort of what you care about, as a brand. Deep consumer connectivity for us has always been sort of the number one thing, right? That's why you'll see us build a skate park rather than running a Superbot ad, right? We want to create those experiences where we have like a deep, immersive sort of platform or an opportunity to engage with our consumers, right? That's why we build the House of Vans all around the world, because we believe that if you're immersed in experience and you're watching your favorite band, or you get to skate in a skate park for hours, we're truly providing you value as a brand, right? We're not just putting our message in front of you. So
Yep.
we took that. That's why I mentioned 94%, because for us it was like, hey, first of all, we want to make sure that this community is stoked, right? Like whoever is on Roblox, we don't want to be like an annoying thing that pops up that feels like an ad or a branded experience. We wanted to feel like we're a part of, and we want people to want to join, right? We want the YouTube influencers that are reviewing the games to be like so stoked about this game, and then be like, oh, and by the way, how cool is it that Vance is doing it, right? So to be a natural part of that conversation, I think that approval rating of 94%, right? That's really, really hard to get as a brand, because normally they'll downvote you, right? Like straight from the bat, if you're a brand, they'll be like, oh, you're a brand, right? Whatever, I'm already going to downvote you, right? Yeah. The other thing is though, is like, how much time are they spending with us, right? And again, I think we can put a piece of content up, right? Like we can put a billboard up, we can put an ad out there. That's great, and that serves its purpose. But when a consumer is immersed in something you've created for them for like minutes and repeatedly comes back, and you can scale that into the millions, I would say that's the second part that we looked at. And then the third part is, we do make products and we want people to wear our products. So what's the opportunity there? But like, what can we provide for the consumer there to sort of wear within that world? And are they choosing, right, to put Vans on? Are they choosing to put a Vans t-shirt on, or a Vans hat on, or some headphones, right, that they're walking around the platform with? I would say that was the third thing for us. So, right, like, what's the approval and the engagement? How deep is that? How far does that go? How consistent is that? Is that just at launch, or does that continue? Does that have a halo, right? Like in terms of the sort of the influencers and the ambassadors there, and then how are people engaging with our products on that?
Yeah, I think so. Just, I know in interest of time, we could sit here and talk about this stuff all day long, but I want to segue a bit into sort of the bigger sort of picture around this thing. I think we spend, you mentioned earlier that, this was a gaming thing and then it turned into a metaverse thing 3 months ago or whatever. And obviously the term metaverse and the hype cycle that's running around that right now, there's a lot of different definitions and different perspectives and people sort of tying themselves to that thing. The reality is a lot of this stuff has been going on for a long time. I think about Roblox being a 2D primarily experience, or it's 3D in the game, but like a 2D sort of experience where you're working on your phone. I mean, most of folks are playing the games on their phone. They're not in a VR headset. They're not in some, crazy sort of visually immersive environment, but it's still the metaverse. A lot of people who live on WeChat and have relationships that feel more real online than they have offline. They're technically in sort of this metaverse. So I'm curious on your take on sort of, as you think about sort of the idea of virtualization, or, this group of consumers that's growing up where they're online, or their digital, or their experiences on the internet with using technology and things like that starts to become more real than the stuff that's happening offline, and connecting to that, not just again in the game side of things, but thinking, how does Vans go into that world, and what will that world look like? What's your thoughts on sort of what's next? What are you interested in exploring? And how do you go from Roblox and sort of getting into a community like this to really thinking about, how massive that shift is going to be for the brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I don't know what the plus 10 year, me thinking about this, like where maybe thinking back to this conversation, I would hope that as this conversation evolves around, the metaverse, I mean, look, I think it's a natural progression, whatever comes next year, right? I think how the sort of different use cases on the digital use cases are going to sort of start blending together, is going to be a really interesting space to watch. And I think that's why Roblox is so exciting, because ultimately the consumer is going to make the decision, right? If the consumer is not going to adopt something here for whatever reason, the thing isn't going to work. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the different players are going to take their strengths and how they're going to build that out. We as a brand are going to have to probably figure out and make some decisions on where we will be and maybe where we won't be, because unlike obviously sort of when the internet was created and it's free for all, right? Like right now, the metaverse players are very much siloed. I would caveat that with in the West, right? I think if you look at China, my prediction would be that you're probably going to see much more acceleration in China, because they're sort of already there in terms of their own ecosystems that they're building, right? It's already much easier to use the same app, right? To hail a cab, get a scooter, get some food, send someone some money and chat with them and play games, right? So they're sort of, I think, already there. But what is this use case going to be on how do you actually plug in to the digital piece where it's natural? I think so far it's still very clunky, so I think, what does that mean in terms of like devices and sort of the physical piece? Because we're still physical humans, right? How do you connect into that? I would imagine that there's probably a future where you are in your self-driving car, where you're on Roblox, where you are, in Van's world, and you are like, you're skating and you go into the skate shop, or you go into the custom shop and you're like, hey, I just designed this cool custom shoe. I want that delivered. I'm going to order that now and it's going to show up at your house, right? That I think is an awesome prospect. There's probably, we're probably closer to that. I mean, what, Chipotle just gave away 1 million burritos, right? So there's already that physical, right, digital physical relationship. But how do you blend the two more seamlessly together? I think, for me at least, the verdict is still out there, because like headsets and weird glasses and all that, like that's an exciting space, right? But what does that really look like to make that more seamless? For us, I would say it's an extension of our omni-channel strategy, right? Meaning we are going to have the ability to create digital experiences. We're going to have the ability to create a virtual store alongside our physical stores. What does that look like if you're like jumping from one into the other? So it's exciting. It's obviously developing sort of at breakneck speed. But I think you'll have to make choices for now as a brand so you don't get overwhelmed. Just the same way that you're making choices on what social media platform are you on, right? What marketing mix are you playing in? What are you choosing? What marketing or connection points of the consumer, what levers do you choose to pull? For me, that is very much where we're at today.
Yeah. And I think another thing that you kind of touched on a bit is it's a bit reactionary at this point, because everything that's coming out is being created in silos. And there's a whole conversation on the metaverse about, where's the W3C version of the organization that comes in and says, here's how the plumbing works and here's how you move, your sort of personas and avatars across these different environments and things like that. Of course, a lot of that is sort of the Ready Player One version of what the metaverse may ultimately be. And, I don't know if you saw there's an HBO show a while back, I can't remember what it's called, but they move forward 10 years every episode. And there was an episode where eventually the daughter in the family, for her birthday, she wanted her parents to just get rid of her body because she could just do everything she needed to do online. So obviously, there's that crazy world that this pushes to maybe someday in the sci-fi future. And I think we're at the level 1 version of that. But I think the thing that came away clear from, listening to you talk about that is just that, in the digital transformation space, I think a lot of brands didn't do enough experimentation, didn't test and learn and things like that, and it kind of hit them like a truck. I always think of banking when people stopped going to branches and banks were like, this is crazy, and you're like, this has been coming for 10 years, you just ignored it, right? So I think I love the fact that you guys are playing in that space, found a way to utilize the brand to be as proactive as possible in testing some of these things. You've got a great brand to be able to do it with, because it makes sense that you're in these spaces as well. So, but I want to try to take some questions from folks in the audience here. So if we've got questions, please send them through. And in the interim, I'm going to ask you one that I have myself, which is, you talked earlier, and I think it's just an amazing line, that we'd rather build a skate park than run a Super Bowl ad. And I think that that drives a lot of the, it illuminates a lot of the decisions that I've seen Vans not just make in the metaverse, but over the last, 30 years in what the company has been doing. How does that ethos sort of spread throughout not just the marketing group, but align the product to the marketing to the rest of the business? Like, where does that, how does that sort of stream through everything that goes on at Vans? Is that the number one vision that drives down from the company? Is that just a part of it? Or, that seems to be like a line that as a senior leader, you come back to again and again to sort of perspective, add some perspective to the decision making you're doing. And I'm wondering, how that ethos actually manifests inside the business.
Yeah, our purpose is to inspire and enable creative self-expression, right? How do you do that? You don't do that by running ads that are a one-way street, right? You do that by being there for the communities and the consumers that have, in our case, have supported us for over 50 years. We were adopted by skateboarders. Some call them misfits. I would call them the tip of the spear of the creative culture that is, very much influenced pop culture over, decades. For us, it's really important that we stay true and authentic to our consumers. So how do you give back? How are you there for them? How do you enable them? It's so embedded in our purpose that spans across the entire, like, to your question, to answer it simply, we have one purpose and everyone is laddering up into that purpose, and that's to inspire and enable creative self-expression. Yep,
that's cool. So I guess there's a bunch of questions sort of rolling in here, but there's a lot around people trying to understand the user base around Roblox, like how many people are engaging with the experience, how big is it, et cetera, which goes back to, your sort of discussion about these pieces and parts and people sort of understanding these spaces. Do you have any, I know it's tough off the cuff of how many people are, getting into the Vans experience, or percentage of Roblox that have used it, et cetera. Do you have any numbers like that you can share with the folks here?
Yeah, I don't have the percentage of Roblox, but in month one, we had 40 million visitors, month one. And we had, at the very beginning, around 15 minutes of gameplay. And that netted out sort of closer to the 10 minutes, right? So, and I would say those visits have redeemed multiple digital products from us. So there are millions of consumers with a variety of a wardrobe walking around in the Roblox metaverse wearing, right? So that's like the extension. There's the people that play, but not only are they now playing, they also took a t-shirt, right, or a hat or whatever it is, and then now jumping into the other game. So I think that's an interesting one, because it's like, as we are learning, about the stats and what matters, like, we're thinking about, okay, well, what does it mean, and sort of. But I would say that's probably the biggest number that I can give you that maybe is relatable.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing that's come out of this experience, this Roblox experience that you've had so far?
A conversation like this. Like, I can't tell you how many conversations like this. It's sort of forcing us to, like, actually continue to think ahead, and I think for me, my favorite thing is just to see how the consumer is engaging with it, and what is really exciting is sort of what's going to come next year, right? Like, I can't wait to see the community build skate parks that don't even look like skate parks, right? I can't wait to see where the community is going to take it. I can't wait to see sort of what the digital product avenue is going to take. Honestly, I got challenged when we started going down the digital product catalog route with what's the consumer facing application of this, and I was like, I don't know. I'm having a really hard time. Like, it's awesome for sustainability. It's awesome that we're going to cut down on samples, right? It's awesome that we're going to cut down on physical production and that we can put that on .com. But that's about it. And then Roblox comes along, and just that work stream that we did on the digital product side has enabled us to cut down 2 weeks on digital product creation for the gaming platform. So, like, what else is going to connect here that we haven't even thought about, where the light bulb is going to go on? Where are the other parts of the business, right? Spatial web, like, 3D stores, etc., that are kind of come to life because of an experience like this. So that's exciting.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I think obviously we're just scratching the surface here. And I guess the other thing I would say is, like, from a question perspective, is it sounds like things are getting more sophisticated. You're at the top of the sophistication list, in my experience too, having talked with clients about this on a daily basis and about it. How do you manage priority? Like, how do you work that feedback loop back into priority and decisions that you're making, versus investing in sort of, trends? Like, when do trends become priority for you and for the team?
Yeah, I would say really quickly, I think they're like, what sort of I've sort of begin getting the team to think about is thinking about the things that are reactive, agile, thinking about the things that are strategic, and thinking about the things that are transformational, right? The transformational things will take longer. They're going to be difficult. They're not necessarily going to be a home run, right? And you have the reactive things that are happening in culture right now, right? People wear slip-ons on a TV show. What does that mean for the brand for us to be a part of that conversation, right? And then strategic, what are the things that you as a brand, you've decided that are fundamental things you need to win in, where you need to stay the course? And those things are going to move around, right? So I think something that maybe Roblox was transformational that you didn't quite know, we're already reacting even within that experience, right? So I would say that's how I think about prioritization, is like, how can we sort of compartmentalize this and then have a conversation about, this is cool, we could do this from a reactive perspective, but what's the lift? Is the squeeze worth the juice? Like, should we be doing that? And then having that conversation with the team and sort of bring that clarity back to the team. I think that's really important. You have to bring focus to the conversation, but you have to be open and find a way where you can find an agile way to react, right? Because who knows what's coming next.
Yeah. All right. I've got one last question. The questions are coming in faster than I can look at, but I want to talk about NFTs for 1 second. So obviously this is like, I don't know, next to the word metaverse, it's probably the second most popular keyword in the space right now. We're working with three high fashion brands right now to understand, how NFTs do really cool things. Like, they give people access to own pieces of a collection of something they can't otherwise usually afford, because you've got different price points and things. That it allows the brand to be more accessible, and there's fun stuff like that. Vans being different price point, totally different audience. In some respects, obviously the street and fashion worlds are crossing over like crazy, but I'm super curious in sort of where NFTs sit in your brain, and how you're thinking about them. If you can spend just like a minute hitting that.
It's a really interesting space. I think as a brand, look, let's take the sustainability conversation just off. So there's a massive thing around sustainability that I think you have a responsibility as a brand to take that in consideration, right? Let's take that off and say that will be solved, which I think it will be, will be solved for. But I would say that is a big consideration, right? at least where we are today. You know, NFTs are another version of how you're gonna bottle experience, how you're gonna bottle memories, right? And what you can do as a brand. And for us, that means someone landed an awesome trick, you know, at one of our contests, right? AKA what NBA is doing, you know, I think they're doing a great job there with the moments, and, you know, like the today version of the baseball and basketball cards, you know, I'm German, so I've not grown up with that, but I can understand that, right? And then you have sneaker culture, which is already very much a culture of collecting and, right, status and what do you have, right? And then you have just the creative community. I think that for me is the biggest part, right? So I would say that for us probably is the sweet spot, is all the things that our community is creating. It's another opportunity for them. Yes, for sure, it's an income stream, but it's another opportunity for them to get their message and their art out, right? The musicians, the artists, the skaters, right? Like it is such a it is such an opportunity, just as another form, just like digital product is. This is like almost the extension to the digital product and the opportunity to potentially monetize some things here, which I think has been tough for the creative community. It's not easy. It's much easier to be on platforms and potentially get seen. It's much, much more difficult, I think, today to monetize your art and your creativity, you know?
Yep, 100%. Well, Nick, thank you so much, man, for spending time today to do this and in the pre-time and all the things. I love talking about this stuff. I'm sure we'll have more conversations. I wish I could get to all these questions, but you know, thanks again, man, and hope you have a great rest of the week. And yeah, just really appreciate you doing this. So,
Thank you for having me.